All right, we're going to be talking, Jens Larsen and I are going to be talking about our differing approaches in music. Here's how you find Jens very easily on YouTube. Just look for Jens Larsen guitar. That would be my suggestion, Jens Larsen. There was a little preview of Jens's YouTube page and my YouTube page. I just made a new URL that makes it even easier, because these YouTube pages, unless you're somebody like Gimpy Slut or whoever these young people are who have 20,000 people, no, 20 million people following them, you don't get a, like Jens, your URL, I don't even know if you have one, but it's easier to just search for you because somehow you come up right away.
Yeah, that could be. I think for me, it's I think it's still like, I don't have a real URL like you have. I didn't even know you can do that. So.
Well, there is one, but it's like Randulo 2008. But this one is youtube.randyresnick.com. I just set this up this morning. I said, what the heck? Make it easier. So yeah. The idea here is Jens and I are going to talk. This is not an interview. We agreed to do it this way, but we came up with a bunch of questions. I just wanted to explain in the beginning that our approaches are quite different because we come from literally two different generations, unless you're way older than I think, Jens?
No, I think you're a little bit older than I am.
Let me put it this way. My first professional paid gig was in 1966, I would say. So I don't know what you were doing then, but
I was still waiting 7 years to get born.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, and also, I tend to lean more towards blues. I've played some jazz, and I love jazz. I listen to almost nothing but jazz. And Jens is coming from jazz, but plays blues and has played rock, and we're going to get into that right now.
Yeah.
This is the first time. So Jens, I think we should start by finding out how you even got into music at all, and what was your first instrument, in case it wasn't guitar?
No, my first instrument was guitar. I started on classical guitar because I'm from a very small town in Denmark, and the only thing you can have lessons in there is classical guitar. You can't have, there's no electric guitar. They didn't have that at the time. So that's what I started with. And actually, the weird thing is, the main reason for me starting to play guitar in the first place was that when I was 12, my best friend had guitar lessons. And that meant that I couldn't play with him on Thursdays. So then I figured, well, then I might as well just do guitar as well. And then that got a little bit out of hand. And now that's what I do.
And, you know, as you get into the teen years and all of that, there is an aspect of maybe trying to get attention from the ladies.
Well, at the time it was still like classical guitar. That's not so hip, you know. It worked kind of. I learned to play Blackbird, but no, yeah, that wasn't really there. So yeah, like the ego on stage and stuff was not really available until much later when I was in high school.
Right. Did you play professionally? Did you play any classical recitals? I guess professional means for money, so maybe not. But what was your first professional experience on the guitar?
I think that was like doing some when I finished high school, I went to the university to study mathematics. And while I was studying there, I started to become more and more involved with cover bands and also some more serious own rock bands and stuff like that. And we didn't do a lot of gigs, but we did do gigs once in a while, and that would be paid, I guess. I don't know how much. I doubt if it was a lot, but I actually have no idea.
Well, just to go back to the ping pong business of you know, adding my 2 cents. I was given a guitar when I was 13 by an uncle who someone gave him a guitar, and it was a classical guitar, but I have no discipline for that kind of thing, and I didn't even study it. My first instrument was actually clarinet, like a lot of young people in America. Just played with the band and all that. Not any good, although I have one behind me. I won't prove it. I'm no good. But like I said, my first gig was probably at some little dance or something locally. And I eventually got into playing in, you know, we'll go back to you and you can tell me if this happened to you. But in the United States in those days, almost every nightclub had a band, and we played cover tunes. So I eventually very quickly got into that. And when you start playing 5-6 nights a week, 3 or 4 hours a night, it starts to, even if you're just doing covers and not many solos, I don't know, it builds a certain facility you're maybe not a virtuoso, but you learn to play in front of people and you learn to look good if you can and so on. What was your experience relative to that?
Well, I mean, I think in Denmark we don't have that tradition for live music at that time, or at least at the time when I was on the university. Like, we were in a bigger city, and therefore there were student parties in student houses, and there you might get a horribly paid gig for a band, and that's it. But like several times a week was not happening at all. That was much later that stuff like that could happen. And I think that was also for me. Then I'd already gone to jazz, and then that was what I did, and I was studying and playing. Actually, it's a lot of information, a lot of experience playing. I did a lot of playing in the streets in Copenhagen with a bass player. So I had an amp with a.
One of the things that you and I talked about before we got going here was the approach of learning, and that's something that I definitely want to talk about. But I wanted to mention an anecdote, which is a friend of mine who's an excellent saxophone player named Bob Rockwell, who now lives in Copenhagen. Yeah. Maybe you probably heard of him. Maybe even play with him.
Yeah, I think so once.
Great player, and he's from Minneapolis, and so am I. And we were talking once, years and years ago, and he went out. What made his career what made him get chops and get experience was that in those days, Las Vegas had bands, and all the jazz guys played in those bands. Not that they got to solo that much; it was all reading charts.
Yeah,
that is what formed his experience in his career. After I was playing in clubs, then I had a little part of military service and did more playing. And then I moved out to California, and we'll get into that more later as you and I go back and forth here. But point is that to get good at something, you have to have experience. And it's said like 10,000 hours, blah, 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 so on. Some people are more gifted than others. But what I wanted to get into here a little bit today is how you're now preparing. First of all, what did you do in the early days to learn guitar, especially the kind of guitar you're playing now? So you did a little rock and stuff, but getting into jazz, what was your methodology for practicing? Did you have lessons and then have things you had to do, or did you have a book, or what?
Well, I mean, for me, at the time when I suddenly realized, okay, I wanted to play jazz, I'd figured out that I wanted to play music that was about communication within the band also. That was an improvisation. Those were two sort of important things for me. And then I basically just took as many lessons as I possibly could. So yeah, I had lessons with actually quite good teachers. I learned quite a lot from, and then just made sure that I could. I mean, you need to practice, and of course I practiced as much as I could. I didn't do anything else than play guitar because I was an unemployed mathematician. So I spent my whole time playing guitar, and then play as much. Like we went to the street to play with me and a bass player, simply to learn, because it's the same. You wanna make the miles, and you don't want to solo all the time. It's not like that. You just want to play as much music as you possibly can and get as good at it as you possibly can. And since we couldn't get any gigs, we just played in the street, which actually at the time paid quite well also. So and I built a whole, like in the beginning we could do 3 tunes, and in the end we could do 50, after 2 years or so. And that means also solving all the real problems you run into about playing together. And for me, it was like playing the themes with chords and stuff like that. All the stuff that you need to do in that setting. And I think that mentality, you must have that too. Also, like at some point, the important thing is just that you play music, and then because you just like playing music, sometimes it's a little bit secondary what you're playing, as long as you get to play and you learn something new, and you learn some more music, and you get to see other people and play with them, and that is actually more important than what kind of music you're playing. A little bit. I still have that for a big part, actually.
I couldn't agree more. One of the things that I learned very quickly when I went out to Los Angeles, I know this is true of New York, less true of places like Minneapolis, where I grew up. But in Los Angeles, for example, a lot of jazz players and a lot of legitimate players had practice bands. So they would go and just play at somebody's garage or something once a week. And that's very hard well, let me put it this way. In France, I was going to say Europe, but to my knowledge, in France, it's something that's not easy to do for several reasons. First of all, not that many people have garages in here in Europe. It's a different culture. If you live out in the country, I guess you do, maybe. But it's unfortunate. This mentality of how much is this going to pay? Otherwise, I'm not going to play. In this particular case, when people would go to these practice bands, you'd have really good players. And, they'd either have charts or it would be maybe rhythm and blues stuff that didn't necessarily need charts. But this is another way of so you're playing with all different people and you don't know them. Because when you're playing in your little niche, small town, that's great, but it's less of an exposure thing. So you get less experience. So we should mention your band, by the way, because I don't know how long has that been going on, and pronounce it for me because I'm not sure.
My band, because my band is it's a jazz quartet, and it's called Trapping, which is Danish for wooden leg or peg leg, and that's been going on since.
Why? Because you play in 7 a lot, or?
Well, actually, we only have like 3 songs in 7, I think. But no, I think actually we called that because we're 2 Danish people in the band, and one of the Dutch guys who's also in the band heard us talking in Danish about a guy with that and thought it was a funny word, and we needed a band name. We actually already recorded a CD and we just didn't have a name for the band. That's a little bit how that came about. But I think you're right. I mean, the whole practice band thing is something it's disappeared a little bit out of my life. Also, it's difficult to really get it together. I think both my girlfriend is a bass player, so we both are conscious of this, and that you try and get that. She does it a lot more right now because she's starting to move towards salsa, and I'm also planning to see if I can find a way to get more into that again, because I used to do it more, and it keeps your chops up, but it also gives you a space where you're free to just take some chances and get challenged by whoever you're playing with, and it is actually in Holland and in The Hague, it is really a normal thing to have, like that you just meet up with people and jam if your schedule allows it. I would say my schedule it makes it difficult at times, and I think that's often the case for a lot of people. I mean, we work a lot, so it can be difficult for that reason. I think that's actually the main reason, I think, for us, not so much the lack of garages and stuff like that.
Well, there's also the lack of people's availability. I'm lucky because I don't work anymore, so I don't have to work, so I can play whenever I want. We don't have a great space for playing right here, though. So there are studios. None of them are convenient. But right now, speaking of having the time on my hands, now I'm getting back into learning again, because I actually stopped. I did not touch a guitar for something like 6 years. Have you ever passed any hiatus? I bet not, but I'm asking anyway. Did you ever? You never had to spend?
No. As soon as I at the point for me, it's been like since I decided that I wanted to play guitar, essentially, which is like by now 20-something years ago. Then
never hurt your hand or anything and had to stop just for a week?
Yeah, but then I was still studying. I was like, then you just keep going. I've had a few times where I had, but not a lot. It's really like in stressful situations, like just before an entrance exam and stuff like that.
I should have alerted you to this, but you can probably think on your feet. I wanted to mention also our sources of inspiration. We talked about this as well. And one of the things, talking about learning and approach to learning, I was fortunate to meet Ted Green, a really great guitarist, and took one lesson from him before I suddenly I was unemployed, took a lesson. There was a waiting list, and he called me and said, there's an opening. I got on it. And after one lesson, I got a job. So I had to take that job. But I wanted to point out for sure, recommend this book. It's called Chord Chemistry. On the left is the original, which I own. In fact, I've probably bought 5 copies and given 4 of them away to young guitarists. And on the right is the modern cover. And I'm putting that there because actually you can get this on Kindle, or you can get it, as a PDF or whatever.
Yeah.
This book, and you can tell me in a second, I just want to get through the presentation, then you can tell me if you are familiar with it. But mainly, this is a book that has, I don't know how many thousands of inversions, but they're all in either, well, not quite, but sort of, it's like they're all in A or E. And then, you know, you just move it up and down the neck, because he realized that there's no point in having 10,000 chords that are the same chord. You know, and that's what these guitar encyclopedia chord encyclopedias, 10,000 chords. Yeah, it's 10,000 chords. It's like 1,000 times the same 10 chords almost.
So, you know, yeah. No,
So that's annoying. Do you know the book?
Yeah,
Jens?
no, I got it. Like, I got it, copies from it, like photo, because when I had lessons, I got photocopies of it. So I know, like, that layout is very familiar to me.
And you know also that there's a website that I just gave a couple of dollars to, by the way. Ted Green passed away several years ago. He has a website, and hopefully you are familiar with this, because he's got like hundreds of tunes worked out by his students in the style of Ted.
Yeah.
I just want to say one final thing on Ted Green, which is that it's a jazz book, and he's written jazz books. That's the only book I like of his a lot. But I think that it's really a great book for anybody who plays any kind of music, period, because it's an ear training book. It doesn't, if you just put your fingers in the place where he's got them on that page, and you just randomly even open the book and look through it, you will learn a lot. Unless you absolutely only want to play folk music with A, E, and D, with an occasional G, and no mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is true. Like, the examples are really good, and it's music. Oh, I like the fact that it's all in a musical context, of course. I mean, but the way it's written out, it's actually only useful for guitar players. I mean, it's written out in diagrams, so there's that limitation. But
but any kind of music is what I mean. If you play the guitar, there's voice leading stuff to go up and down the neck. It'll teach you the neck. It'll teach you. It's very good for the ear.
Yeah.
And whether you play salsa or even rock and roll, you can learn a couple of advanced licks, and especially chords, because rock music and even pop music, I mean, it's pretty sophisticated harmony these days. Country music, even, lots of sophistication. So you can play without sounding too jazzy, because that's what it is today. And this book will help you with that. Anyway, do you have another book or website or anything that you'd want to recommend to people? That's where I'm putting you on the spot.
I think no. I mean, I think like there are 2 books that I used really a lot, and for the rest, I actually never. I was given photocopies of stuff like this Ted Green thing, and I later bought it because I used it for my students. But for the rest, like, the book that really meant something for me and opened a lot of doors was the Mick Goodrick book, The Advancing Guitarist. Mm-hmm. Mostly just because he doesn't spell anything out. He actually just tells you, like, well, you need to know all this stuff. Go figure it out. But then he's also just talking about why you want to learn something, how you want to learn it, and it's a completely different way of approaching it, where it's more like, well, there is all this stuff you need to explore, and here's like the raw material, but how you get there, well, you can do this and you can do this, you know, and that way of thinking about it, and also just being involved in when you're studying. Of course, this is something I checked out when I was already fairly advanced. I found very useful, because this idea that you're conscious of, that's lacked in jazz music. Education has been quite horrible for a very long time. And this idea that you actually can think about all sorts of topics and all sorts of aspects of playing, like swing feel and timing and stuff like that, which was, at least when I started, I've still met people who were sort of referring to that as if it's magic, and it's like you have it or you don't have it, which is crap, to be honest, because it's just like, well, you can learn everything, you know, if you sit down and try and learn it, but you need to figure out how to work on it, and you need to first figure out what it is, and then you can work on it. And I think that book really opened a lot of doors for me in that respect, and also just because he lists all the types of chords that you want to learn, but not how to play them.
Right.
And you know, so there's a lot of stuff where you start exploring, and that was, for me, that works well for me. I like to dig into exploring things like that.
And it's obvious that I'm hearing a little bit of echo, so that's why I'm hesitating.
Oh,
can you mute for a second?
Yeah.
While I'm talking. So I just wanted to make it as we would say, the elephant in the room, which is your YouTube. Here's a quick look at it. But as I said, I'm going to give that again because, in fact, Jens, the reason you came to my attention is because you got hundreds of lessons. There's 301 videos. Are those all lessons, or are those?
No. By now, it's gotten completely out of hand with making videos. So I still only make one lesson a week. So about half of them are lessons, I think.
And what you're doing something on Instagram too, and give us your Instagram name and all that as well.
My Instagram name is my name, so Jens Larsen Jazz. That's just Instagram/Jens Larsen Jazz. Well, yeah, but that's a similar thing. Instagram is a place where you can only post. When I started, you could only post 15 seconds, and now you can post a minute. And actually, with a minute, as you know, you can make an entire lesson because you made 1 minute lessons at some point.
Right.
And that's what I do with that. Sometimes I'll just make small examples of chord voicings or lines, and then so that's very sort of compact, and it's a fun place for that actually. And for the rest, it's just also just a place to reach a lot of people. Instagram is not banned. I think like Facebook and YouTube is not that available in China and Iran. I'm not sure. I get the impression because I can reach those people with Instagram and they contact me, but they don't really know what's going on YouTube or on other places. So yeah, so for that it's also sort of useful. You can reach some other people that you wouldn't normally reach, I guess.
It's interesting. I didn't have the energy. I went on Instagram for a little while, but I just didn't have the energy. And I was under the impression, and you kind of proved the contrary, but I was under the impression that it was all stars and, you know, people taking selfies and all that. Obviously, you are the counterexample of that because you're doing useful stuff, and that's interesting. But I personally don't have too much of the energy. I wanted to mention also, speaking of YouTube and your great, really good lesson channel, it's amazing, you know, because when I came up, obviously the only way to learn was to take a record and play it at 33 or something like that, or take a tape. We didn't have any electronic stuff to slow down riffs. And now, of course, you could have Audacity or something and just play it at any speed you want and keep the same tone. There are devices that do this too. But more important than that, when I started playing bass a few years ago, I discovered that there are probably 50 super good bass players on YouTube giving free lessons, kind of like what you're doing. You know, there's a series of lessons. And then there's schools. I don't know if you're into this, or you could be doing it, or maybe you've heard of it. There are a couple of, well, you know that Heike, the classical guitarist, whose name escapes me now, you may know who I'm talking about.
I think so.
She's on Staccato, is that it?
Okay, yeah, I know who it is, but I don't know what she does exactly. But I know there are a lot of people who also have like these sort of membership subscription services where you get lessons.
Right. But this is different. I took bass lessons from a guy, a world-class bass player, whose name I can't remember all of a sudden. But he's great, and you would have heard of him. It's off the top of my head. But what I was going to say is these are schools that have like one guy or one woman who's teaching one particular instrument. This guy was the bass, and I think she's doing classical. So these are videos. So there's a whole library of stuff, and you go there, but then you're also in contact with this world-class player, and you're sending them videos. So it's a direct. It's not like YouTube, and it's
no. That was what I was thinking about with the subscription service, where you pay a monthly fee to get access to a library of lessons, and then you get video exchange lessons also, right? That's what you're talking about.
Exactly, and that really works well. That really works well. Patitucci, John Patitucci.
Oh yeah, of course. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
He's a fantastic. Anyway, that was a great experience.
Yeah.
And I felt that he was really there. I mean, when he answered, and of course, I'm a beginner too. I mean, you know how hard it is to teach beginners. And he was just there. And so there are other schools. I'm not even going to make an ad for the school. I'm just going to say that he was in it, but that if you want to learn how to play guitar, there are guitar schools of all styles, including Heike's classical lessons, but also jazz, obviously rock, and so on. I wanted to get into other stuff, but I'm wondering if we should do that on another session.
that might be better. So I think like keep it. We can better talk about the things that we are actually go a little bit deeper in what we're talking about than just doing a lot of topics, I think.
So in the future, what I would like to do, and then you can say what you want to do, but what I would love to do is get into more how you prepare for gigs, how you prepare for recording, how you prepare maybe to meet new people on something where you're not sure, you know, like maybe you get a call for on a gig that's something that you've never done.
Yeah.
And they may have charts. I mean, are you asking, oh, do they have charts? What are they doing? How good do you have to read? And so stuff like that would be, I think, interesting to follow up on.
Yeah, no, that's sure. That's a good topic. There are a lot of different situations where you get that, for sure.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know. I mean, I think there's still a lot to be talked about in different things with how you learn and how and like what you're talking about, how you learn different things and how you can study now and how you used to study, and I think that's a good subject also to return to, mainly because it interests me. I one of the things I do is I teach methodology at the conservatory here in town, so I'm also just from that perspective a little bit curious.
Do you see, that's excellent. And that's exactly what I would like to do. In fact, somewhere I have a notebook from like 1970, and it's got a lot of stuff that I wrote down, and I had a routine. At that time, I had a routine that had like a list of 10 things. I do this, do that. I'll give you an example of harmonics, playing harmonics with the pick, you know, playing arpeggios on harmonics. So that's just I just put harmonics. Ted Green harmonics. No, Lenny Breau harmonics, I put. I remember that on the list. But I mean, there are also chords in seconds, chords in fourths, blah, blah, blah. So there was this list of 10 things. Do you have such a list, or did you ever, have you ever been, or did you ever have a list?
When I started, so when I had classical, when I got electric guitar lessons when I was 19, then my teacher told me, like, well, if you want to learn, you need to practice scales, and because you want to improvise, play solos, and then he showed me how to write down sort of a schedule of different things that you would and add metronome counts to it and dates, and so that you could progress. And so I had that for some time. For the rest, I almost never write down what I practice. Actually, I have a very strict program, in fact, but I know it by heart, and it's always. And then I'm also very conscious of trying to have a very strict program that is never really the same. So I always try to make sure that I'm always practicing something new, by varying how I play scales, what scales I'm playing, and always just trying to keep that moving, just to get more flexibility, simply.
And some of your recent lessons I was looking at actually touched that idea of a practice like you play, don't play like you practice, basically, is the resolution of that. In other words, don't get too caught up in scales and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, you've got to know scales. You have to know your way around them. It's nice to know as many as possible and so on. But then every once in a while, you listen to somebody playing. Generally, they would be amateurs, not professionals. But I mean, they're just playing lick after lick from scale after scale, and there's actually nothing there that's being said. And so that's a problem that we all have to be conscious. And by the way, as soon as you get any virtuosity, any facility, as we call it, that's a trap. The pianist Michel Petrucciani once said that technique is a whore. Basically, what he meant was that once you get that much technique, because he was a virtuoso pianist, once you get that much technique, you have to pull yourself back from falling in that trap of playing real fast all the time or playing really hard stuff all the time, because it's not going to say what you want to say from your soul.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I mean, there are people who will insist that that's what they want to say, of course, but that, I mean, yeah, I think it's very true, you know. So, and it is, I think most people figure that out if there's something they learn and they know that it works well. And I also I've actually played gigs where it's like you can tell sometimes you'll have an audience and they just like you to burn, you know. They're not really, it's almost like they don't really care about the music, but if you play a solo with a lot of energy and a lot of notes, and it's a little bit like impressive in that way, then they really like it. And I've had that quite a few times. And I know places in Holland where it's like, if I go there, I have to play a little bit like that, even though it's maybe not what I really want to do. But then they enjoy it more, and then you just go for it. You can really feel that. And I can imagine also, I mean, if you just manage to play Cherokee in tempo 300, then then you want to do that, of course. I mean, I get it, but it's true.
Well, that you make an excellent point to finish with, which is that we're not there so much to please ourselves. Hopefully we do, but we're playing to people.
Yeah.
And so you have a contract with those people, whether they're paying you or not, they're in the audience. And if they're listening and they like something, and for example, if they want you to play fast, and so on. And that's important. And you can never emphasize that too much, because that's what it's about. You're talking to them, they're going to get the message. And if they love it, then you've succeeded. That's great.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Okay, well, we'll work out another one of these if you're
definitely.
if you're ready to do it, and we'll figure out the where we're going to put this as a series. Right now, it's just on my channel, and of course, you can. Well, we'll talk about that later. I'm going to put this slide back up for a second. Jens Larsen, you can look him up. You can look me up, randyresnick.com. Jens, your site is jenslarsen.nl, right?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, goodbye, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.